Wrath of Angels. Chapter 6, Scene 2. Wrath Awakens. Aboard the Wrath of Angels. Alarm sanctum, muster bays, and launch corridors. 9 months, 1 day after extraction from Caridon. Month 7, year 261, the 41st millennium. The Wrath swallowed the rune and went still. For a heartbeat that felt like a held breath, the stratagem did not dare to move. The augur slate still ghosted the jagged mark Saren had sent, betrayal, its after-image floating in the eye like a wound. Mortals at the listening posts kept their hands over their ears long after the feedback had ended. Someone whispered, "They wore our colors," and someone else hissed him quiet with a frightened, fluttering gesture. "Enough," Seraphiel said. He did not raise his voice, but the word crossed the chamber like a drawn line. Motion returned. Servitors resumed their whispering ticks. Acolytes bent to their stations. The hololith rethreaded the derelict's rolling bones. Melchizedek shut the book of subtraction with a dry clap and slid the chain back through its clasp. Varadiel's lashes lifted. The faint light in his eyes guttered out, leaving a sober human gaze. "We strike," Seraphiel said. No broadcast, no hail. Burn through and take their tongue. Orders unfurled. Vox officers spoke as if each syllable might cut them. The Wrath answered with a low, content groan, the noise a great ship makes when it is given permission to be herself. Sirens woke like bells in a monastery. They were not frantic alarms, but measured notes. 3 long, 2 short, that rolled down shafts and up ladders, through galleries and messes, along the spinal ways, under bulkheads hung with relic glass. Mortals listened, stiffened, and ran. Hangars opened their mouths and breathed people. Serfs in oil-stained robes sprinted with fuel lines over their shoulders. Munition crews unlocked cages and wrestled heavy crates onto grav sleds. Cherub servitors fluttered under the vaulting with tags on their wrists. The air tasted of promethium and hot metal, and the powdered incense that lived in every seam of the ship. On the main deck, the Emerald Vow were already assembling, armor plates clicking into final places. Seals giving off small, satisfied sighs as pressure balanced. Sergeant Varicon stood with helm unplugged and resting against his hip, his scar-crossed face calm in the red light. He watched his squad slot into the shape he always drilled for. 2 files, clean angles, every sight line covered. Then nodded once, as if answering a private question. "Check," he said, and 10 green-armored sons spoke their names, and readiness not to him, but to the line. Mulvan raised the banner staff and unfurled the emerald cloth. Its weight took him by the shoulders, like a hand. The winged sword across it caught the hanger light and shone as if lit from within. Garen worked his jaw as if grinding grit from his teeth and checked the magazines across his chest yet again. Jorath, youngest, flexed his fingers and stilled them with effort, eyes fixed on Varicon's profile like a pilgrim finds a saint's statue to be brave. Ephraim hummed a scrap of a catechism under his breath. When he realized he could be heard, he hummed louder, stubbornly, and Malvin's mouth twitched, because some habits are how a line stays human. Across the aisle, a mortal armorer traced a sensor across their bolters. "By the cog and the coil, by the sainted tooth, awaken clean, fire true," he whispered, and the machine spirits clicked their quiet ascent. The hangar's opposite flank took the light and made of it a wall. The oathbound of the sanctum came as a weather front arrives, inevitable, without hurry, heavy with what it brings. Dominiel led, the flail mortalis chained to his gauntlet and hooded like a hawk, the storm shield held on his forearm like a door he had decided would not open. Lutherian came a step behind, his great shield's face engraved with script so deep it seemed a trench cut through bone. Ramiel strode with his storm mace balanced at shoulder, a patient thunderhead with a mouth like a straight line. Abriath's helm still bore the ragged crescent scar where a demon's blade had slid and not quite taken his head. His gaze counted distances, exits, corners, possibilities. Zephynis shone. He could not help it. Zeal does not know how to dim itself. They halted beneath the shrine banner of the lion that hung at the hangar's end. Censer smoke coiled around their boots. A watcher in silence stepped into their path and held out a parchment strip no longer than a finger. Dominiel bent his helm. The watcher placed the strip against the rim of the shield and pressed. It adhered of its own will, the script upon it taking fire and then leaving no ash at all. Abriath watched the interaction as a chess player watches a hand over a board. Zephynis simply bowed as if thanked. Melchizedek came down the stair with his escort like a chapbook illustration made obedient. Black, bone trim, scripture in strips, the skull helm in the crook of his arm, the Crozius, a winged hammer that looked heavy enough to dent the hangar deck. His presence gathered silence the way a furnace gathers air. He stopped on the line between Grenwing and Deathwing and faced them as if he were weighing a blade in his palm. "False angels," he said, and the phrase carried the weight of a diagnosis. "They wore our heraldry to murder children and call it truth. They have taken the shape of an oath and put a mouth to it that lies. What does a surgeon do when a mouth lies?" He let the question stand long enough for the mortals at the edges to feel it bite. "He takes out the tongue," Melchizedek said. "He cuts the nerve. He sews the wound shut." He lifted the Crozius. "We are that hand. Emerald vow. You will be the wall against which their pretense breaks. Oathbound, you will be the hammer and the seal. Take prisoners where a head will speak. Elsewhere, silence." "Silence," Varicon answered. "Silence," Dominiel agreed. Varadil stepped up beside them, the blue of his librarius armor like a shard of cold sky in all that green and bone. He carried a staff capped in a warded brass cage. Inside the cage, a small flame flickered without consuming itself. When he spoke, the taste of the air changed, as if dust at the back of the throat had become rain. "The path your boots will walk is drawn already," he said softly. "Not by fate, which is a lazy word, but by geometry and harm. I will nail lines through the warp between this deck and the crush of their corridors. When you step into the line. When you feel your thoughts stray, speak your own name. It will close the distance." Ramiel's jaw moved once, acknowledgement without flourish. Zephynis tilted his head, as if listening for the promise of impact. Seraphiel crossed the floor without escorts. He did not need any. Weight moved around him, space ceded. He stood in front of the banner and in front of the two formations, and looked from Varicon to Dominiel, and then over their shoulders to the men who would make the shape of his order true. "This is simple," he said. "We do not argue with shadows. We drive light through the hull and let it show us what bleeds. You will board in 3 blows. The first is Greenwing, line, wedge, line again. The second is Deathwing, breach and anchor. The third is the closing fist. If a commander shows himself and can be taken, he is taken. Anything else is ash. Do not speak to them. Do not be drawn into a story that is not ours." His gaze paused on Zephynis for half a heartbeat. A line of pride and warning might have crossed there. If it did, it vanished into duty. "Move." The hangar changed key. Crew sprinted to the boarding pods and through the last latches. Chaplin's acolytes ran in a line, touching plates with little brass hammers, a tapping that became a rhythm that became a drum. Cantors in red hoods climbed onto crates and sang the old words that make armor remember it is not a coffin. Smoke thickened, sweet and bitter, spiced with oils. Above, the Stormravens turned their wings and showed their bellies to the light like whales rolling to display scars. The Emerald Vow went first. They marched up the throat of the nearest pod 2 by 2, backs straight, the slow lift and plant of boots like a metronome slowing a frantic heart. Malvern came last with the banner. He went backward for the final steps so the cloth faced the men, not the door. When the pod swallowed them and the door came down, the banner's green became a last slice of colour, and then only the seam of it, then nothing. "Go with steel," Varrican said into the band, not poetry, just the truth shaped to help. The oathbound turned together as if some gear had meshed. Dominiel knelt briefly, not a genuflection exactly, but the adjustment of a weight before a lift. Lutharian's shield thumped onto his boot and up again. The noise was like a stamp on the floorboards of a church. Ramiel rolled the head of his mace, and the field around it grumbled. Abriath checked the charges at his belt, a small count of the tools he would permit himself before the world narrowed to a point. Zephynis struck his flail's hood free with a twist of the wrist. The chain sang once as it tasted air. A mortal boy, not more than 16 winters by the look of him, a hanger rat pressed into censor duty, stepped in front of Zephynis with both hands on the pole. The censer swung and spilled smoke over the Terminator's greaves. The boy's eyes were wide enough to show the good white at the edges. "Brother," the boy whispered, "will you?" Zephynis leaned, a tower making itself kind. "We will." The boy swallowed. "Thank you," he said to the armor, to the man inside it, to the god he thought listened, to anyone. "Clear the way," Dominiel said, not unkindly, and the boy ran, relieved to be told what to do. Varadiel lifted his staff. The small fire inside the cage flared and steadied. Lines tightened across the world. Those who could not feel such things still felt something. The hair rising along the forearm, the little pressure on the teeth, the way words would suddenly come out cleaner if you chose to speak them. "Now," Varadiel said. "Now," Seraphiel echoed. The clamps released. The wrath exhaled. Pods kicked from their rails like teeth spat from a jaw. They fell away and then ignited and roared back toward the derelict like ideas returning to an argument with better words. Stormravens peeled off their racks and slid into the lanes, engines charging, wings biting vacuum with pilgrim hunger. Vox traffic filled and layered and then leveled into a calm lattice as the officers did their work. From above, the hangar looked like a wound closing as doors rolled and sealed. Inside a pod, the Emerald Vow stood shoulder to shoulder, the bodies of brothers becoming bulkheads. The floor trembled under the burn. Jorath whispered the last line of a prayer, and Garen grunted, "Enough!" And Jorath shut his mouth and grinned behind his teeth, because sometimes that was exactly the right liturgy. Malvern braced the banner staff into its socket. Varricon closed his eyes for the space of 2 heartbeats and saw the corridor they would open into, as if memory had been placed in front of him to be used early. Inside another, the Oathbound were a different weather. Their armor made the pod seem too small for any notion but one. Dominiel spoke so quietly, the Vox would not bother to catch it. Lutharian caught the words anyway. "He will run," Dominiel said. "He will try to make a story of it. We write the ending." Ramiel's mouth shifted a fraction. It was almost a smile. Abriath's fingers tapped once on his pauldron and stopped, because a habit was not the same as a tick, and he would not be owned by either. Zephynis breathed slow and deep, flail chain whispering as if his heartbeat had moved outside his chest. Between them all, the ship sang. The Wrath's bones were full of old echoes. Tonight they were full of one new thing, purpose, hot and clean. In the gantry shadows, a watcher in silence bowed once toward nothing, and stepped backward until nothing redrew him. Separation, a mortal voice said on the command channel, professional and small. All pods away, all wings away. Flight green. Take their tongue, Seraphil said. And if there was grief in him for 5 boys who would never climb another ramp, it went into the words like iron goes into a blade. By vanishing, it made the edge. Engines burned in the dark between ships. The derelict rolled, showing its wrong face and its right face and the seam between. Pods arrowed for the seam. The Stormravens dropped toward the ruptures carved earlier by drills. Sirens in the wrath wound down to a low note like a breath held and held and held. On a lower deck, a Vox runner slowed near a prayer stall with a broken votive and touched the splinter with 2 fingers. "Make us clean," he said, and then ran again, because the only prayers that matter are the ones you speak while doing the work. Steel met steel. The first pod struck. Bolts screamed as teeth bit and locked. The wrath was awake. This has been Wrath of Angels. Chapter 6, Scene 2. Wrath Awakens. Chapter 6, Scene 3 follows.